You're listening to the Savoir Faire audio experience.
Are you ready?
The Savoir Faire experience is your guide to everything that has to do with lifestyle. From dating, rides, style, and entertainment. All brought to you by the editor of Savoir Faire magazine, Robert White. Anything goes on this audio experience. So, let's go.
It's still the best.
All right, guys, welcome to the Savoir Faire audio experience. I'm super excited about knocking out these podcasts and these interviews and sharing the behind-the-scenes kind of aspect of our brand with all of you people that are listening. And the numbers are getting bigger and bigger, so I'm getting more and more excited about the audience growing. So I wanted to put that out there. But today is another great category that I love diving into. Our culture category covers a lot of music, and people just need to be educated about really good bands that maybe a lot of us don't know about. And so today we're talking to Larry Kennedy from the JellyBricks. What's up, Larry?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Robert.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you, man. I was listening to some of your music earlier today, trying to get a little flow for what you guys have going on. It looks like there's some good old boys in this band that have been doing this for a while. So that's super exciting. And I definitely want to dive into a little bit more about the JellyBricks and some of your new stuff you guys have going on. Let's kind of start with some history here and dive into where the JellyBricks came from, how you guys all met, how you start playing. Maybe you can kind of give me the backstory.
Yeah, well, in the in the mid-90s, 1996 or so, I was originally from Youngstown, Ohio, is where I was born and raised, and I had been playing in bands there, and I reached sort of a crossroads I had a band that broke up, and I had considered going solo, but at that time it was one of those deals where I had played with almost everybody in my neighborhood. Nothing was happening for me at that time. And I had some family located in central Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who invited me to come to the area. I happened to have a cousin who is a singer-songwriter and understood that I was looking for some musicians to work with. And he knew some people in this neighborhood and said, why don't you come down here and make some demos, and we'll see, what we can do with your music career. And really, I just came down here to kind of kill some time and be creative. And I went into a recording studio and started recording some solo demos. When I wasn't finished with those, but before they were finished, an engineer who worked at the studio, who had been on vacation when I was there, came in and heard the tracks and really liked them. And he noticed that they were missing bass guitar. And the guy who I'm referring to is the guy who is now the JellyBricks bass player, Garrick Chow. He was working at the studio. Yeah, he heard the songs. He was a bass player, and he thought, I know exactly what to play on this. So he reached out to me and said, do you have plans for bass guitar for this? And I said, well, I hadn't figured out who I was going to get yet. And he said, do you mind if I take a crack at it? I said, sure. So he put bass down on what I had, and I loved what he did. And once I told him that, the next thing he said was, well, would you consider coming down here and forming a band with me? And I was like, yeah, I would do that, because I didn't have a better idea. And he said he knew a guy who played guitar and who could sing and who could write, and he had a van. And he knew another guy who
a guy with a van.
drums.
That's what every good band needs, right? Just a guy with a van.
Well, for years that was the main appeal.
Right.
And that turned out to be Bryce Connor, who is he's the other guitar player in the JellyBricks to this day. And then he had another friend, a drummer by the name of Lane Wheeler, who actually did play the drums for the JellyBricks for the first 2 years, but then he actually parted ways with the band on amicable terms. And in a most bizarre turn of circumstances, the very first gig that we had to play without him, Tom Christich was in the audience, and he offered to join us on stage on the drums. And that's the man who is playing drums for the JellyBricks to this day. There are a lot of almost happy accidents that led to the formation of this group. And we just celebrated our 29th birthday.
Yeah, man, you guys are not young boys. That's for sure. How old were you when you started playing guitar and kind of getting into vocals?
Well, I was a kid Beatles obsessive to
Okay.
start. I was into the idea. If you had asked me when I was 5 years old, what did I want to be when I grew up, I would have said I want to be one of the Beatles because I didn't understand that was not an open job.
If only. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's
like you
cool.
can't do that. But nevertheless, it definitely had a pretty major impact upon my love of music, and I was playing in bands by the time I was about 14. I met just the right bunch of friends. You know, we weren't overly clever, but I was writing songs in my teens, and so I had a lot of time to prepare for what became the JellyBricks. But meanwhile, Garrick and Bryce, the bass and guitar player in the band, have known each other since they were 5, and they have actually played in bands together going back to their high school years.
Very cool.
So those guys have history that goes back beyond when I met them.
Yeah, I love that the band kind of just like fell together. I mean, that's kind of the universe kind of doing its work, I think. In some situations, it's different if like, you know, you were out there putting out ads looking for a bass player, drummer, whatever. But the way this story goes, it's very unique that, I mean, yeah, Garrick was just like, yo, I know what this song really needs. Do you mind if I throw it down? And then boom, you're just stuck with him. And then he brings in Bryce, and then Tom's just in an audience saying, yo, I can do drums. Let me play with you boys.
And
And
I mean, it is kind of fairy tale like.
it very is. It's cool.
Absolutely true.
It's a very, very cool, like originating story for the band, which is awesome. So I want to know, what the heck is a jelly brick?
Well, the name came about, you know, we were actually gifted the name by a friend of ours, a drummer who's in another band from this area that have been around as long as we have, called the Martini Brothers.
Okay.
And the drummer's name is Reg Troop. And he knew that we were looking for a name, and I had a specific idea for what kind of a name I wanted, which was, the thing at the time was, I wanted a name that would allow us to fight back against what was then the music industry tendency to want to pigeonhole the style of a sound of a band. I just was really vehement that I wanted us to be able to do whatever we wanted stylistically. So I wanted a name that was a sort of a contradiction, like a soft and light at the same time, or an edgy and funny, or, I mean, in a nutshell, whatever kind of music we're making pretty much either falls to the side of either the jelly or the brick, but it fits.
Interesting. So it's
Yeah.
the sweet and the sour kind of combination you guys went for.
Yeah, I mean, and our guitar player Bryce used to like to tell people our music is sweet like jelly, but hits you like a brick, which, you know, not,
That makes some sense. Okay, that's the line. I
but
was
in
like,
the early days, I used to tell people we're what it sounds like when you grow up loving Simon and Garfunkel, but you heard AC/DC and Anthrax in your teen years. What do you do with that? And, you know, a lot of, you know, music from, say, post 1986 has a reflection of that. You know, the grunge era had a lot of very tuneful writing, you know, with a lot of screaming, you know. Just,
yeah, right,
and
right.
that's sort of that we emerged out of.
That's pretty cool. I like, now that you've explained the name and the one-liner that comes from it, I think that's cool. That should be somewhere on your website, honestly. You need to have that, like, oh, as sweet as jelly but hits you like a brick. It's a very cool thing to explain the name and allow people to kind of realize what they're about to step into if they've never heard you guys play before. Which is kind of alarming that most people haven't, because you guys have been on the road with some amazing artists. You guys opened for the Goo Goo Dolls, Fuel, Better Than Ezra. These are some of my favorite bands, the stuff that I listen to when I wake up in the morning to get my day started. And somehow I'm just now meeting the JellyBricks. And when I listened to your music today, I was like, oh yeah, I love these guys. The sound is so good. So what I like about the idea that you've opened up for some of these really great artists and stuff is you probably have some very cool stories from like being on the road and touring. I would love it if you dive into a couple of those for me, because I really want to understand some of the characters in the band and how you guys, you know, intermixed with each other. And those stories seem to give away a lot of that stuff. Well,
first of all, thank you for the compliments on the sound of the band. I appreciate that. Well, the first thing I should say is, we never really achieved getting to properly tour.
Oh.
We were never financially in a position to completely pull that off, although we were very close.
Well,
On a couple of
we had
occasions.
Bryce in his van though, right? In the very beginning.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. We've definitely traveled, and mostly, I guess, in other words, we've never been able to really walk away from day jobs long enough to really do it.
Oh, to really go on the road. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but we've done a lot of weekend warrior playing over the years, and we've managed to play. We played out on the West Coast a number of times. This year, we made our first visit to Texas. We've had standing invitations to go overseas, but have never quite figured that one out for ourselves just yet either. But as you can see, we haven't shown any signs of stopping either. So, but I guess what I would say, as far as the stories go, my most favorite element about what I recall, because we have really been fortunate to open for a lot of interesting artists. I mean, I've really lost count of how many of my heroes I've gotten to open for on stage. It's pretty exciting in that regard. But one time we got to open for Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings. And that being, of course, Bill Wyman, the bassist from the Rolling Stones.
Yep.
And we had just finished performing our set, and we really went over well with this theater crowd. And we were backstage in this dressing room, and we were kind of, patting ourselves on the back because we knew we killed it that night. And somebody in our ranks said, "What do we do about the fact that we want to meet Bill Wyman, but we don't want to, be idiots about it?" Because we're right across the hallway from the dressing room. And by the way, his band had all these other famous people in it. I actually got harassed in good humor by Gary Brooker from Procol Harum all evening because he was one of the keyboard players in Bill's band.
Wow. Okay, cool.
I mean, yeah, we've gotten to be around some really, fantastic, accomplished, legendary artists. But anyway, the question gets asked, how do we go about wanting to try to meet Bill Wyman but not make fools of ourselves? And somebody then answered, "Well, that's easy. We'll just wait for him to come to us." And we all laughed. And no sooner did the laughter die down that there was a knock on our dressing room door. And I get up and pull the door open, and there standing in our doorway is Bill Wyman himself he's wearing colored shades like, the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and he's smoking a long cigarette. And directly behind him on the wall is a huge sign that says, "Absolutely no smoking." And he says, "Was everything all right for you fellas out there?"
Nice.
And the point of my story really is some of the nicest people we have met are some of the most famous. We've been ignored utterly by people half as interesting as Bill Wyman, and I won't name names, but he was very kind to us. And Dave Davies from the Kinks was also very kind to us, and threw the compliment at us that he liked our arrangement.
That's cool, man. Honestly, like it's cool to hear stories like that because I'm not a stranger to the music industry by any means. I was in Nashville when I was a kid, and I was one of those people that kind of tried to pursue some stuff and ended up kind of falling back, becoming a writer. And these days I run a business and work with different talent and do some other stuff, and obviously have the magazine so I can continue to, be creative. It's kind of my creative outlet. But I've learned from so many different artists that it doesn't matter what genre of music you're in, there's a competition, an unspoken competition, because everyone wants to be on the charts. Everyone wants to be number one. Everyone wants, the money and the revenue and picking these dates and tour dates and whatever. So when you see really kind of cool collaborations where, an opening band and then, the lead act or whatever, and then people are these legendary guys that you're meeting that have been doing this for years, when they finally reach out and just be like, hey, and this is a cool story for you guys, obviously, that, is everything okay with you guys? Like he's checking on you like in a caring way,
Yeah.
which is so cool to me to hear stuff like that, because it's a guy that's like, he's very humbled now or at least at that point. And he's not in the aggressive gameplay that the music industry kind of is.
You got it. We were blown away by that experience. We just couldn't believe Bill Wyman was that nice,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
I mean, I've interviewed a lot of cool artists, very successful artists in my time too, and it's very humble to hear them say like, oh, well, because I would reach out to them in private or whatever and be like, hey, I've got this thing going on. Can you give me some information on so and so? They're like, just Robert, we don't really do that stuff. We know songwriters, we know producers, we know studio guys, we know the people that are really kind of in it to kind of put the music together. He's like, but the other artists, like we might see them on the road, but ideally, like, we're not really interacting like that because it's a cutthroat kind of industry where everybody's trying to get, the listenership. And that was kind of amazing to me to hear some of that stuff and realizing that, I mean, these are like the good old boys from country music and stuff that I was communicating with. They were saying this stuff. And I'm like, well, now every time I hear a story about an artist that is established going to somebody else that, I'm not saying you guys aren't established because you've been around forever. You guys have been doing great, but just going to somebody in that capacity and checking on somebody. I love that kind of stuff because that shows like true class, I think, for the artist.
Well, and I think we are as a band, we're cognizant of that. Like frankly, one of the reasons we've lasted as long as we have as a band is because we got lucky enough to find 4 guys who know how to treat each other with respect and kindness and consideration. And, it makes it very obvious when we're around people who aren't like that.
Yep.
And again, I'm not gonna name names, but I will say once we actually opened for a very famous person who was actually standing on stage with us while we were packing up our gear to get out of his way so he could perform, and he very much acted as if we were not even there. It was a very strange dynamic.
Wow.
It was we were invisible.
I won't name names either, but I'll tell you another little horror story since we're chatting a little bit. And I'm sure my listeners would love this. I hired a very, very, very well-known rapper for my birthday party one year. And I'm not a frugal. I'm like, it was just a stupid thing. I had a good month and it was my birthday month and I'm like, I'm going to find somebody. We're going to do a public concert. And so I rented out a local nightclub in my town that held about maybe 3,000 people. And we brought in this very well-known rapper. And from the moment I got him off the plane, he was like, take me to the liquor store. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, you got a couple of drinks, you just got into town. That sounds good. And he had an issue, clearly had an issue. So this went on for hours while we hung out and kind of killed some time before he had to perform or we had to be at the club to do some stuff because it was later in the evening. He finally, we get there and I say, hey, are you ready to go out and do your stuff? Now, this is a guy that had maybe 3 or 4 really big hits in the early 2000s. Everybody knows his songs. Everybody knows his songs. He has like 4 major ones, okay? And so he goes on stage at okay, we're talking about nightclub life, right? We're not supposed to have you on stage till like 11. You're supposed to actually perform for a couple hours. Like, he was also a disc jockey in that day and age. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have you do your big hits. We're going to draw the crowd to the dance floor. Then you're going to DJ. People will hang out with us. It'll be a cool scene. At like 9 o'clock, he went up on the stage on his own. We had other people that were performing, took the microphone, talked to the DJ we had in the booth and was like, play that track or whatever, like some kind of weird drop line. And then he started his own concert and he did 4 songs, his big ones. Everyone danced, had a good time. And then he left.
Wow.
And I was like, wait a second. This is like the worst experience I've had with an artist, period. Not only is he a total mess, but he went up on the wrong time. He didn't perform 2 hours. He performed 20 minutes and was gone.
This sounded so good in the planning stages.
It did. I was like, this is going to be a great night. People are going to know my name. We're going to celebrate. We're going to have a good time. And then I had all these people that showed up knowing that he was going to perform at 11, right? So now people are showing up at 10:30, and we don't have him there at all.
Oh, man.
Yeah, dude. It was a mess. It was a disaster. So I wish I was a bigger company when all that stuff happened, because I would have tried to do something to refund myself or get something going. But it was a total loss, bad reputation thing. It was just a rough night. But that's the kind of stuff that's so unprofessional. That person doesn't get booked anywhere anymore. I definitely made sure that people in my industry knew about my story. It was one of those bad band stories and stuff. So I completely understand kind of people acting with some kind of arrogance or they're in charge, and those stories are kind of unique, but obviously, I don't want to scare a lot of people that are thinking about music, by the way, because they might be listening to you and I
Yeah.
and be like, hey, what the music industry sucks. I'm not going to get involved with these people. It's really not like that. These are just very rare occasions where the bad stories are good stories now.
Yeah, and really, in our experience, on balance, we've been pretty fortunate.
Yeah.
Of the people we've met who were really well established, the majority of them have actually been very nice. So
That's so cool, man.
it's just funny that Bill Wyman sticks out like a sore thumb because he literally is bigger than all of the other ones combined, and
Oh,
nobody
yeah.
was nicer than him.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've met some people, I met some legendary people, and I couldn't believe how humble they were when I met them and how much they really cared and wanted to talk and get to know you really in brief moments, right? You're passing them in moments
Yeah.
when I meet people. And in brief moments, they just show you legitimately that they care about who you are and they're willing to give you that minute of conversation. Well, man, I want to dive into some other topics with you because you guys have a new album coming out called Dreaming in Stereo. By the way, I saw the cover of this. It looks so cool. I want that to be
Thank you.
I want that to be my bedroom, but I want an ocean view, not a river. So I'm like, that's exactly how I wake up in the morning. Just speakers surrounding me, blowing me awake. So I love the
That's
cover
awesome.
art. Talk to me a little bit about Dreaming in Stereo and what you guys want this album to portray. Like, what's the storyline about with the album?
Well, to tell you the truth, as organic as the band came together, as we were talking about, our approach to songwriting and operating as a band is a pretty unforced. I mean, we do find ourselves coming together into concepts like, I mean, the artwork for Dreaming in Stereo, obviously you can kind of put together what we were going for there, but
Mm-hmm.
the album is only called that because Bryce Connor wrote a great song with that title, and we couldn't beat that title for the album.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because we usually are, we kind of, have some little things we try to do. One of them is, we usually try to come up with an album title that isn't just a song title if we can. And if we have a song title that's just too good to pass up, then it will
Mm-hmm.
often win. Our previous album was also a song title, Some Kind of Lucky, which we just felt that really described us as a band. I mean, we're a
Mm-hmm.
pretty grateful act as far as knowing how fortunate we are. But by the same token, Dreaming in Stereo, it just kind of, it's sort of like the band name, Dreaming in Stereo, allows for some span of style and ideas in the record. And I think as we push forward, we always have an eye on trying not to really overly repeat what we already knew how to do and trying to find new ways to, deliver our music so that it sounds fresh for particularly longtime fans. We have a lot of fans that have been listening since the very first record. And anyway, yeah, that title just seemed to us to be a great opportunity for us to do whatever we wanted once again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really all we're doing on I mean, every one of our records is kind of just an effort to better ourselves as opposed to hit anybody over the head with a particular idea.
That
We're
makes
just trying to
sense.
make
Yeah.
better music. It
Yeah.
might sound a little generic, but it's pretty
Well,
true.
I don't think it's generic. I think it's probably more common than most people think that an album would be put together based on a sporadic kind of storyline of songs. And then someone says, well, that song is probably going to be our title track because that's got a cool name. And it does make sense. Dreaming in Stereo, the photo, the whole cover art and stuff. It's very cool. I mean, I dig that. So now I want to go listen to Dreaming in Stereo because I haven't heard that track yet. But when's the album actually come out?
It's coming out on Friday, February 7th.
Okay, so February 7th. Okay, perfect. So that's going to be 2 weeks from today. And then is that Dreaming in Stereo going to be released on Spotify, YouTube, all the normal places?
Yes, it will. It's coming out on the Wicked Cool Records label and is being distributed by the Orchard. So you should be able to pretty much get it just about anywhere. I mean, it'll be in physical stores, but I know that's not what everybody does. But it's everywhere you could look for streaming music or downloading music, Spotify, Apple Music.
Nice.
And I should say, while I was talking about, some of the very accomplished artists we've met who have been nice to us, there's really nobody, by the way, actually more so than Stevie Van Sant himself.
Oh, what a great, that'd be an amazing, I would love to meet that dude.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, if you're asking what our goal was with this record, well, once upon a time, our goal was to get noticed by Little Steven, because when we became aware of the radio program that he was programming, we thought that there was a home for our music there. We thought he would get us. And we actually pitched, I think, 3 records to him before he did get us. But once he did, he really liked us, and we became a band that he was willing to champion. And that really has made an impact on our career.
I bet. That's such a cool thing, man. It's really no different than what most people do with influencer marketing these days. And having someone like that that's so established and well-known talking about somebody, then people are going to pay attention. Well, I want to dive into one more topic here with you really quick, because Dreaming in Stereo as an album might be a mishmash with a really great title. But you guys have a release called Devil's a Day Away. That's the single that just came out from that album. Talk to me about Devil's a Day Away. I really want to know the storyline on this one, because that's what turned me on to you this morning when I was listening to all my other traditional rock music. And then I went to my email. I'm like, oh, I'm meeting with Larry today. And then I clicked the link to listen to the song. And I was like, am I understanding this storyline correctly? And if I wasn't, I was like, that's cool, because I have to talk to Larry anyways, and he'll tell me what it's about.
Well, tell you what, I'm going to do my best, and here's why. Because that song is actually written and sung by our drummer, Tommy Christich.
Sweet. Okay.
Which I should just mention, one of the things that I love about the JellyBricks is that we are a multiple singer, multiple songwriter band. We have different guys coming at the idea from different angles. And so that's, in the end, the band always kind of puts its spin on everything we're doing, but everybody has an opportunity to kind of express themselves in a way and do it through the voice of the band. But Tommy, whose songwriting I enjoy very much, the best that I can offer you on Devil's a Day Away is that I kind of get the impression he's having a bit of fun with the idea of the fragility of life. But also with the inability to get away from something that's dangerous to you. Right. So, like, I really like the imagery in there about flying through the red lights in the stolen car. I think that's sort of like literally just talking about the fact that you could be doing nothing wrong to anybody and just have some calamity fall upon you because you're in the wrong place. That's just an element of what it is to be human. And I that's about as
I was picking up on that one too, like The Good Die Young and some songs like that. I was kind of like, this is just a really rebellious dude who's just living his life the way he wants to, and his whole focus is like, the devil's a day away. That kind of made sense to me, and it rang true. So now that you're talking about what the song's about, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
and I, again, I'm fortunate that we have multiple songwriters. Everybody's kind of got their own style about things, and Tom has a very kind of unique songwriting lyrical style of his own within our ranks, and I love the songs that he writes.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that you guys have multiple kind of multiple jobs. I mean, everyone's playing an instrument. Clearly that's an isolation type of thing. There's a guitarist, a drummer, or whatever, but now that you guys are all, some of you are really good vocalists besides yourself. And then obviously the writing is kind of a collaborative thing between everybody, which is cool. I really like that, because I think in a lot of bands that I've even spoken to or learned about, there's like one or two guys that are like, maybe the lead singer and the guitarist are really the main guys that are writing all the material, and everyone else is just learning the songs. But I've realized too with the band element that when someone does come up with a good idea, the band kind of gets to hear the idea and come up with it to kind of make it their own. Like, Larry could write a song. Clearly you could write a song that's all about you. It's your personal world. But as soon as you put it in the hands of your bandmates, then it becomes a JellyBricks song. It becomes something different, right? And I love that kind of idea, to hear, the melody and the changing and the way something's played, knowing that there's 4 really good guys that are like putting their piece on this one track.
Yeah, I mean, I lose track sometimes of some of the little changes that make our songs what they are, but we're the kind of a band where somebody will literally say, "Are you sure you want that note what if you did this note there? I mean, and we like each other enough to listen to each other. And so, somebody listens to what you're working on and they're like, I love this, but what if you did this? And then it gets better.
Yeah, that's a really great collaboration story for sure. So, man, I really appreciate you, Larry, finding some time to hang out with me today and talk a little bit about the band. I want people to go check out the JellyBricks.com, which is your guys' website. As soon as you land on the website, scroll down half an inch, you're going to see the new single and a link to go check out Devil's a Day Away. Definitely check that out. The new album for JellyBricks is coming out in 2 weeks. We'll do a follow-up story if this article comes out too soon, so that we can make sure people get access to that and do an upgrade to get that link in there when you guys make that public. But yeah, man, you're added to my playlist, dude. You got another follower on Spotify today. So you're in my favorites, and I really appreciate connecting and talking with you.
Thanks a lot, Robert. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for giving us a forum to tell people about our new music.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for listening to the show. Please take a minute to head over to www.savfair.com and subscribe to our publication.